As a professional driver, are you maximizing your miles every week that you put on the road? On this episode of Driven Too Far, we're digging into your personal habits to figure out how you can put more money in the bank. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Welcome back to Driven Too Far. On today's episode, we're talking about personal standards and are they getting you the results you want? So recently, I came across a YouTube video by a leadership coach by the name of Brian Kyte. And he had a great way of presenting to coaching teams. So he works a lot with NFL teams, college teams, and he really made me think. He basically said, are you getting the results you want? In other words, if you're chasing a national championship every year and you're expecting a 12-0 type season, does your team have 12-0 type behaviors, standards, culture, and even leadership? So I thought that was a great way to think about it. He kind of reverse engineered that, if you will. He says, well, tell me about what was your record last year? Oh, it was 5-7. Well, if you had a 5-7 record, then you probably had 5-7 behaviors in your organization, 5-7 standards, 5-7 culture and leadership, etc. And obviously the light bulb goes on. I was like, man, that's fantastic. So if you're not in a place where you want to be as a professional driver, this is one of those times where you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself some tough questions. If my goal as a company driver is to make $100K a year, $120K a year, whatever that is, and I use his formula to look, if I'm shooting for $120K, but I only made $85K, something's not lining up, right? So that's where I really got to look inside, and I've got to ask myself some tough questions there. Okay, if I follow his formula, I want $120,000. I'd like to make $120,000 this year as a company driver. What do my behaviors look like? Well, in order to make $120,000, I got to have $120,000 type behaviors, which probably means, obviously, I got to deliver on time. I've got to manage my home time, which means I get in and out of the house when I'm supposed to. I'm efficient out on the road when I am out working. Am I maximizing every day that I can? What kind of trips am I picking? What kind of traffic lanes am I running? Am I running areas that I like to run? And am I passing up other things that might actually pay more? So it's those kinds of questions that you have to start asking yourself. One of the most common things I hear, from drivers, whether it just be visiting with them in the lounge or maybe comments online through social media posts, whatever that is they're always complaining about making money. I need to make more money. I need more miles, whatever that looks like. And those are obviously pointed at the company themselves, maybe at a dispatcher or something like that. But, there's always two sides to that. So can you get to those jobs that are 100K, 120K? Yeah, I know they're out there. In fact, we have some here. We have drivers that are, I don't know if we've got any company guys hitting 120. I know we've got a couple guys kind of pacing at the 115, 116 mark for the year. So that's really exciting to see. That's the highest number I've ever had in my organization over 30 years. I said for a long, long time, I've always felt that, this over-the-road driving gig is a $100,000 a year job. I 100% think that the drivers deserve that with the sacrifices they make, being away from home, away from family, some of the treatment they get out there, some of the things they run into on the road. It is a tough gig. It's a tough job. So, and I think the pay should represent that as well. But I've also got guys in my fleet that would call themselves a full-time OTR driver that make $85,000 a year. So then you got to look at that and say, okay, what's the difference between this guy making 85 and this guy making 115? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of difference. And when you start digging into their behaviors, you start to see what's going on there. And I can tell you, I've got a couple guys in mind that um, not making as much as they want, probably, and they are a little bit vocal about it, or you hear comments about it for sure. But I can pick up some behaviors pretty easily. One of them's around home time. I'm thinking about a guy that probably didn't go home as often in the past, and he got frustrated, and he basically said, "Hey, if I'm not gonna make any more money than this, then I'm gonna try to spend a little bit more time at home." And he's done that, and guess what? The pay hasn't changed, right? It didn't go up, it didn't necessarily go down. He's received his annual increases. He belongs to some of our safety programs and our incentive programs, but his overall pay has not really moved a lot in the last year or two. And I get it. That's frustrating as heck, because you think in your own mind that, hey, I'm still out here on the road. I'm putting in the time. I'm getting these pay increases, but the money's not going anywhere. The paycheck isn't changing on Friday. So it must be the company's fault. It must be I'm not getting the miles. Maybe that's it. Sure, that's always part of it, right? It's never going to be one-sided. It's always it's both of us, right? But when you start to compare those things and you look at the differences, and I'm talking about the habits and the behaviors of the drivers, it's not that hard to figure out why this guy's making 115 and this guy's only making 85,000 a year. We just stepped out of a driver advisory meeting. So we have a panel of 6 drivers that kind of guide us on policy, procedure. They represent the voice of the drivers in the fleet, and we meet with them at least once a quarter. But today we happen to be talking about standards. And from a driver's lens, from a driver's perspective, what do you see out there where we're not quite cutting it? Meaning the drivers themselves don't quite have the high standards that we would like to see from everybody. Because going back to the analogy and talking about Brian Kyte's philosophy, if we want a 12-0 championship team, that means we have to have really high standards in the fleet. And we know we're not performing at a 12-0 level right now. So what does that look like? What do we have to change? And the best part of Brian's video talks about you want 12-0, but you have 5 and 7 behaviors and 5 and 7 standards. You're not going to get there. It doesn't work like that. You can't have those type of habits at 5 and 7, a sub 500 type team, and think that you're going to the national championship or even going to make the playoffs. It's not going to happen. So that was an easy one to kind of convert over to our business and talking with advisors. I thought it was a great discussion today. We talked about pre-trip inspections, obviously comes up, right? So tires is always a challenge on trailers. We talked about securement, tarping. We happen to be a flatbed company. So one of the things that drive these guys crazy is when they see not only some other flatbedder's truck where his tarp's flapping in the wind, one of our own trucks where the tarp's flapping in the wind. Just kind of makes them like, I just want to shake my head. What's wrong with this guy? Where's his pride? Doesn't he know how to do this job better? So I thought those were fantastic discussions today. I was very excited to get into that with them, because what I see is these guys on this advisory board, they're on there for a reason, right? They got elected by their other drivers, and they've already got the high standards. So now the goal is, how do we bring the rest of the fleet up to their high standards? And that's what we're going to be working on going forward here. So back to the question of the paycheck for you. Do you have high standards? Do you maintain those high standards every time? And if you do, you're much more likely to achieve those goals, that winning record, if you will, of the 12-0 or $120,000 a year, whatever that looks like. If you have high standards, you practice them all the time, they're your non-negotiables, you never compromise on those things, you're going to get to that goal. Now, if you're somebody that's easily swayed and I'm going to stay home an extra day, or I don't feel like coming out of the house today, well, I only feel like running about 200 or 300 miles today, I'll just be late on this load, it's not a big deal. Those are low standards. And guess what? You're going to get a pay that matches those standards. So keep that in mind. Certainly translates right over to the lease operators, the owner operators, the ICs, independent contractors out there too. If you've got lazy standards because all of a sudden you're making a little bit more money with the truck, and it's caused you to kind of step back a little bit, then at the end of the day, with those low standards, you're probably going to have a higher cost in your business. You're not going to make as much money as the other guy in your fleet that's leasing the same truck, running under the same dispatcher. And those are a lot of the reasons why. So I'm not saying it's always the driver's fault. It certainly is not. It takes everybody on the team to make people successful. But there's definitely something to the drivers that hold themselves to a higher standard and take a lot of pride in their job, and they want to get it done, and they've set goals and they work at those goals. They work at them very hard. So leadership as a whole isn't just for managers. It's not just for somebody like me. You have personal leadership as well. And the leadership you have drives your personal culture, drives your personal behaviors and habits and standards, which is going to get you the results you want. So if you're not quite hitting the results you want, maybe it's time to take Brian's formula and work it backwards and try to figure out where you could improve yourself. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode.